and then we will kick things off. Yeah, we still got some folks coming in. Yeah, we still got some folks coming in. Okay. Alrighty, so Tessa, let's go ahead and we got a few folks still joining us, but we'll go ahead and let you start to share and things. So, good evening,
Sounds good.
everybody. Thank you for taking an opportunity to join us this evening. I'm joined by some lovely members of our financial aid team, as well as some student accounts folks, as well as our dean, our director of first year mission, Sarah Lindbergh. She's hiding in the backgrounds there, so she will be hiding in the background to also assist us in the chat. We will be recording this particular webinar. So if you would like to cut your screen on, that is fine. Just do know that we are recording. However, we will also make sure to provide the recording later on this week to everyone just as you register. So sit back, relax, have those questions ready to put in the chat. We'll have those in the chat for you as well. And I will turn it over to Tessa Howard, who is our Director of Financial Aid, to introduce herself and her team.
Hello, welcome to our chat tonight. Let me go ahead and share here with you. Give me just one moment. I was having a little bit of technical difficulty here. I'm still here. Bear with me. All right, I think I've got it. All right. Could someone please let me know if you can now see our presentation? Good. Thank you, Molly. Okay, thank you for coming to our chat tonight. We are going to be focusing this evening on federal direct loans and some other information about, regular loans that first-time college families tend to utilize. I am Tessa Howard. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at UMW, and I am presenting today with my colleague Molly Smith. She will be manning the chat, and as well as our student accounts manager and bursar, Kim Carini, will be joining us. So we are happy to answer any questions you have regarding loans, scholarships, anything having to do with financial aid, as well as questions regarding the billing process, 529 process, or anything else you just might have questions about. Our presentation will include a short PowerPoint. And as I am presenting, if you think of questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. Molly will either answer or wait until our question and answer portion so that we can give that information to everyone that is online tonight. All right. Okay, so before we get into loans, let's talk a little bit about where we are in the financial aid process. We tend to do this in all of our chats just so everybody kind of knows what's coming down the road. So check out our friend Sammy Eagle here. He is on the path to starting classes in the fall. Right now, we have passed our priority deadline for the FAFSA. So even if you are not planning to take loans, we encourage you all to complete the FAFSA. Even though we are past our priority deadline, you could still complete it. We're happy to work with you to put a financial aid package together. And you never know, you may end up being eligible for something additional. Some foundation and private scholarships also require the FAFSA to be on file. Our scholarship application is open right now and will be open until May 15th. And here's just a little bit more. Of course, May 1st is decision day. If you are interested in breaking your bill down into multiple payments throughout the semester, Our first 26 fall 26 payment plan opens mid-May. This is if this is something you might be interested in, you can find more information through our student accounts website or by contacting our office. Also, like I said, our bursar is on the line tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And that could be anything payment plans, college saving plans, the billing cycle, any questions that you might have. For June, if your FAFSA was selected for verification and we've reached out to you, that is when our paperwork is due. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to our office. We also encourage you, if you have not done so already, we are happy. One of our advisors is more than happy to have a cost conversation with you and your family. We can break down the potential bill with your financial aid and any other payments you have coming in. We can do that in person in our office. We can do it by phone. We can do it by Zoom, whatever works for you. You just need to give us a call and we can get that scheduled. Also, we have orientation coming up in June, so make sure to save your spot now. If, excuse me, another thing that comes up around June, July is we ask you to set up any authorized payers or delegated users. These would be a third party that you might want to be able to have a copy of your bill, be able to see your financial aid, be able to contact our offices. This is also something that we work on at orientation. June, late June, early July is generally when you'll want to finish up determining your payment strategy and also apply for any plus loans, which are parent loans, excuse me, or private loans, and check in on your 529 college savings plan, or if you have any veterans benefits. I will also say, and it's not in here. Oh, yes, it is on here. So for July, July 1st is when the Virginia Military Survivor Independence Education Program, or VEMSDEP as it's called, opens to students. So at that point, if you think you may be eligible, you'll want to go in and complete the online portion. They will work with the school. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us and, we can walk you through some of that process. All right. So let's jump into loans. Okay, so anytime you complete a FAFSA, you and anyone who completes a FAFSA is offered federal direct loans. Now, these are the loans that, when I was younger, they were called like they're your student loans. They're what you get offered from your FAFSA. The name is escaping me right now what they were called. But basically, federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans are the most common types of federal loans that are used by undergraduate students. Both are borrowed in the student's name. They do not require a credit check, and it makes them a little bit more accessible to first-time students. However, if you see these on an award letter, there are very important differences between the two portions of direct loans. And families should definitely understand that before accepting any portion. So a direct subsidized loan is a need-based loan, meaning the eligibility depends on financial information submitted through the FAFSA. The key advantage here is that the federal government will pay the interest that accrues on a subsidized loan while you are enrolled in school. So the amount that you take out of a subsidized loan, it will be the same amount that you begin paying back after you graduate. So that is one of the key advantages. Students have to be enrolled at least half time, which is about 6 credits per semester here at UMW. And you also have you don't have to do repayment until after you graduate, like I said. And you do have a deferment period after graduation, which is 6 months. So 6 months after you graduate, that's when it comes time to begin repayment of both subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Because that interest doesn't accumulate, subsidized loans are usually the least expensive option and should be And if you need to take loans, always consider a subsidized portion first. And you can always only accept one. You're not required to accept both the subsidized and unsubsidized. You can always say to your school, you know, I only want to take the subsidized portion. You could even say, I only need a subsidized loan for the fall semester for $500. That's all I want to accept. So those are just some options. Now, your direct unsubsidized loans are available to almost all students, regardless of how much financial need they have. As you can guess, this is because they are not need based. Basically, the interest will begin accruing as soon as it disperses to the school. So the student can choose to pay the interest while they're in school, or you can let it accumulate and capitalize, which means what you pay back after school is going to be a bit more than what you have taken out, which is, something that happens in any type of personal loan, car loan that you would receive. So you always want to think, okay, I'm only taking out $1,000 right now, but 4 years from now, that $1,000 might be $1,300. And as I go through repayment, it's going to continue to have that interest. So I would encourage you, if you need to take direct unsubsidized loans, that is definitely an option. And that is definitely something that students may need to utilize. I did when I was in school. But just know what comes with that and know the facts, and that you should only take the minimum amount that you need. So both subsidized and unsubsidized, well, actually, we're going to talk about that a little later, about borrowing limits. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so something that we get a lot of questions about is the amount of federal student loans a student can receive. Annually, it's probably less than you realize. So a freshman dependent student, so under the age of 24, is only eligible for $5,500 a year in federal loans. That goes up to $6,500 and then $7,500 in your junior and senior year. So this is definitely what I would consider a first step loan, especially that subsidized portion. It's possible, if you don't have other avenues to pay your bill, you may need to go a step further and secure an independent loan, a private loan, or a parent loan. But the actual federal loan limits will be $5,500 per year, no matter where you are enrolled. That is the federal, federal annual limit. Now, if you're an independent student, so this would be someone that's over the age of 24 that supports a dependent of their own, somebody that's maybe active military, somebody that was in foster care. There's a lot of different situations, but they are eligible for an additional amount, which you can see here. But what they don't tell you here is that additional amount is going to be unsubsidized. So just keep that in mind. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. All right. So aggregate loan limits. Now, you might hear some things about this in the news. There's been a lot of talk about student loans and aggregate loan limits and loan caps. For federal direct student loans, the ones we just talked about, there really hasn't been a lot of change. And Molly, interrupt me if I'm wrong. But dependent undergraduate combined loan limit is $31,000. So over your whole 4 years, you can have up to $31,000. And subsidized loans can only be $23,000 of that. And that would be if you receive the maximum subsidized loan each year. So a lot of people will talk about getting into these ginormous loan debts. The federal loans aren't really where people are getting in trouble. It's when you go a step further and maybe take a private loan for more than you need, or a parent loan. Those are the ones that can get up really to those $100,000, loan repayments. So that's kind of what you need to be careful of. All right, so I have mentioned this several times. There is another type of loan called a direct parent plus loan. Direct Parent Plus loans are also federal loans, and they are available to the parents of dependent undergraduate students, and they are borrowed in the parent's name. They are intended to help cover remaining college costs after all other financial aid has been considered and applied. So, for families of first time students, plus loans can appear attractive because they allow you to borrow all the way up to the maximum amount per institution. So, for example, if we're talking about Mary Washington, you might have that $5,500 direct loan. The parent can then take out all the way up to the maximum, almost $35,000 cost of attendance if they choose to. Now, that's going to give them more loan than their student bill. And at that point, the parent would be refunded that amount. But again, what people fail to realize sometimes is that if you borrow over the amount of your bill, yes, it's nice to get that refund and use that for maybe some expenses, but you are going to be repaying that with interest. And that's kind of where you can get into some trouble. So, like I have mentioned many times, that if you've been to any of these other presentations about other items, if you have questions or are concerned about the amount you need versus the amount you are required to take, come see us and have a cost conversation. And we can get you set up and give you some options. So unlike direct loans, Parent Plus loans do require a basic credit check. The standards are less strict than many private student loans. If you have an adverse credit history, you do have the option of having an endorser, if you do not have an endorser, you could be denied. This makes it especially important for families to understand eligibility early in the planning process. Plus loans also carry a higher interest rate and origination fees than subsidized or unsubsidized student loans, which increases the overall cost of borrowing. So we do almost every year, we'll have somebody reach out that says, no, I want my student to cancel their student loans because I want to pay it, as a parent. I don't want them to have that. It's actually not, it would be more responsible to take the subsidized student loan prior to taking that parent loan. All right. Just one moment. Okay. The repayment responsibility for a Parent Plus loan rests entirely with the parent. There's no option to transfer it over to the student. And although deferment options exist while the student is enrolled, the interest will continue during that time. So parents, if you are going to consider a Parent Plus loan, you should carefully evaluate how these payments will fit into your budget. As a parent myself, this rings very true. This is just as if you were taking any other type of a loan. Just because you have that 4 years before you have to make repayment, you should still consider how much additional you'll be paying back. And I'm sure for any of you parents like me that had student loans themselves, you kind of the gist of that. They could take a lot longer to pay back than they would seem to take. All right. Now, here are the new direct Parent Plus loan changes brought on by what we call OB3, which is the One Big Beautiful Bill. And these changes start July 1st, 2026. There are new annual limits for parent borrowers. You may borrow up to $20,000 per student per year. Now, if you see this slide, it will also tell you that there is a lifetime limit of $65,000 per student in total. So if you think about $20,000 per student per year, and if you have an out-of-state student, you may need to use this. But parents, so think about $20,000 a year times 4 years. Does that equal 65,000? No, it does not. So we are at UMW and across the country, schools are putting up some new restrictions where we will take any parent borrower, that's $65,000, we will break it down by a fourth of that, and the parent can only borrow that much per year, unless it is, and then we will have you sign something and have a conversation with us prior to borrowing more, just so we can make sure that you know the limit, and we don't want you to get to your fourth year, your senior year, and not have an option for payment. So again, that's something new for all of us, but we're happy to have those kinds of conversations and talk about, when is the best time to use a Parent Plus loan during the 4 years, and kind of how to utilize that. All right, let's talk a little bit about interest rates. Really thrilling conversation. These have a real impact on how much a loan ultimately costs over time. And this section is more for the students out there, because it's something that you don't think about. And I presume that you don't think about. Maybe you do. But first, fixed interest rates. So federal loans have fixed interest rates that are set every year based on the Treasury. What this means for borrowers, and this is a good thing, is predictability. Your interest rate will not change over the life of your loan, which makes monthly payments easier to plan even from the time you take it out. The impact of interest accrual for unsubsidized and plus loans, that interest begins accruing while the student is in school. So by the time you get to that fourth year, the loan you took out that first year will have a great deal more interest accrued than the ones you took out the fourth year. So if you're making decisions based on, we're going to cover 1 year of our students' expenses, do we want to do the first year or the last year? Those are conversations we can have. If you wait until the last year, your interest will be less. So those are things that we can talk about. Let's see. Finally, on any loan, there is a direct loan fee, and this goes for federal loans, private loans, anything you really have. It's also called, the term you'll hear is origination fee. So this is a percentage of the loan amount that the lender charges for processing the loan. It's taken out before the funds are dispersed, so students can receive slightly less than the amount they borrowed. The interest rate for federal loans is like 1.057%, something around that range. So even though your loan might say, $1,750 is the amount that you have, the amount that actually pays might be $1,730. And we have those numbers. So if you would like to know them, they will be, on your bill. We can go over that with you. But understanding how the interest and the fees works helps borrowers make more informed decisions and better long-term, borrowing decisions. All right, so very briefly, I will touch on repayment options. However, as we've seen in the last 10 years or so, these can change based on government, federal decisions. They can change. So right now, there are a variety of payment plans, but they are going down. The variety has changed a little bit. To be perfectly honest, we don't have the specifics yet. This is something else that will be going into effect on July 1st. So when we know more, we will let you know more. Also, when you take a loan, like when you accept your loan, you do a series of activities. One is called direct loan entrance counseling, and you'll do that closer to the time of enrollment. And that will give you all of the information regarding your specific loan, what the fees are, what the repayment options, like everything will be in that activity. There are things called forbearances and deferments for loans. If there is a time when maybe you have lost income or something has happened, you can apply for deferments and forbearance. So that is an option. All right. So now that we've talked about federal loans, let's just touch very briefly on private loans. Uh, Private loans come from pretty much a lot of places: banks, credit unions, other private lenders, not the federal government. And you can see some examples of the lenders on this slide. Private loans are usually used to help cover college costs after scholarships, grants, federal student loans, and work study have been considered. In most cases, you do have to have a credit check, and you may need a cosigner, such as a parent or a guardian. So basically, shopping and comparing loans. I know we've had a lot of questions about this. So this screenshot actually comes from a product called Elm Select, which is the private lending portal utilized by UMW. So we work with this company called Elm. Elm Select is the product, and they can basically match students with loans that may work best for them based on different criteria. So I would encourage you, if you are considering a private educational loan for any portion of your bill pay, this might be a good first stop. It will just give you some options. You can do further research. It will give you contact information. But the one good thing about private loans is they are very easy to apply for. They send the money directly to UMW. We process it. We verify enrollment. There's really not a lot after applying that you, as the student or parent, need to do. And just like I mentioned, private loans should be considered a last step option, not a first choice. And make sure you're reviewing all free money, federal aid, and payment plan options that might work for you first, and only borrow what you feel comfortable repaying. They can be helpful for sure in some situations, but because they must be repaid, just like I've mentioned on earlier slides, it's just so important to ask the questions and understand the terms prior to making those commitments. Okay, again, we are more than happy to schedule a cost conversation. They generally take less than a half an hour, but we're happy to talk about any extenuating circumstances. We're happy to just have a general conversation about how much the bill will be, and then how much your financial aid might be, and what you might need to do to fill that gap. I would encourage you, I believe we actually have one more after this, but our next webinar is going to be about understanding your UMW bill and payment options. And then that will be more heavy on, bill pay, looking maybe at our billing portal and everything. And then our June 23rd webinar is a financial aid and billing overview. So we would encourage you to sign up for those. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up. But at this point, continue to ask questions. Molly, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have. Can you share the amounts the students can take again?
Sure. Excuse my scrolling here. There we go. So these are the amounts. It starts at $5,500 a year for freshman dependent students. And I should have explained, you see the credit requirements. That's how many credits a student has completed prior to the year. So if you are one of those incoming students that has, what do they call it? Concurrent enrollment credits. Like maybe you've been taking classes while you were in high school, you might actually be eligible for that $6,500 a year. It just depends on how many credits you come into UMW with.
Another question is, are there any loans available without interest?
The only one is the subsidized loan. And Molly's actually our assistant director of loans and federal programs. So she's really the expert on this. But as far as I know, I have never heard of a private loan that does not accrue interest. Molly, have you, in your time,
No, I have not.
Yeah.
That way.
So we always suggest one good thing about Elm Select is that you can review the interest rates and any promotions they may have going on. against each other. So
There's another question regarding Elm Select is, would you recommend those specific loans be in the students' names with parents as a cosigner? I will specifically speak to this. I think it kind of depends on if the student has credit or not. If the student has credit, they might not need a cosigner, but if the student it doesn't have credit, then the parent will obviously need to have a cosigner. I'm in current conversations with current lenders about some changes with how Parent Plus loans are changing. And so with that, there will be some updates with specific lenders in kind of how things are moving in that world as well.
Molly, are you seeing that there are historically private student loans have been the student is the borrower, the parent is cosigner? Are you seeing more options become available for something similar to a Parent Plus loan where the parent is the actual borrower?
Yes, there are
Okay.
specific loans within each. When you click into on Elm Select, you can select I'm the student or I'm the parent and then go from there. I was in a conversation earlier last week with Sally Mae, and they're coming and they're rolling out some additional information to where if you pay a certain amount, I think it's 10 concurrent payments, then you can then sign over your cosigner if your parent is your cosigner to the student. So those things are coming up with
Interesting.
the current changes. So if you have any additional questions, I'll add in my email and we can kind of go from there with answering any questions that you have.
Thank you, Molly.
My student qualifies for the VMSDP. What cost does that cover?
Okay, so for VMSDEP, again, I'll go back to that slide. I guess we didn't really touch on it in this one. Let me go down. I actually included some information, secret information here. So this is a link to, because we get asked so much, this gives some information about the different veteran and military resources. This does not cover VMSDEP, but we do process VMSDP DEP in between our office and the Office of Student Accounts and our certifying officials. So what will happen is when you apply for, and I keep calling it VMSDEP, it's the Virginia Military VMS, Survivors and Dependents Education Program. If you are, and it's the state program. There are two tiers. One of the tiers will be a tuition and fee waiver. The other tier will also be a tuition and fee waiver, but it will include a small stipend for books each semester. So that's usually around $900. So I will tell you the question that we get asked the most regarding this program is, what if my student has VMSDEP and also receives a scholarship? So what will happen is the VMSDEP will go on, it will cover your tuition and fees, and then the scholarship will go on to your bill, and that will cover any other expenses such as room and board, parking pass if you're living off campus, anything like that. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know.
I have another question. If a student comes into UMW with 25 or 27 credits, so close to 30, but not quite there, would the unsubsidized limit still wouldn't kick in until the second year? How do you go about adjusting that?
It would kick in the second semester. So if they came in with, let's say, 27 credits, took 12 credits in the fall, passed all their classes, when we get to the spring semester, it doesn't happen automatically. But if you are interested, you can contact our office about a loan increase, and we would be able to increase it at that point, as long as you had the 30 completed credits at that point.
That's currently all the questions. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, it looks like we have a hand raised. So if you want to go ahead and take yourself off of mute, you can feel free to ask away.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could go back to the borrower protection slide and just give a bit more of an in-depth explanation on some things that may be expected to change and some things that have been like staying the same for the past few years.
Sure. So is this the slide you were talking about where we were talking about repayment options and
Yes.
borrower protections? Okay, the first thing I will say, I'll be completely transparent. With the passing of the one big beautiful bill, or OB3 as we call it, it was just recently passed and it goes into effect July 1st. However, a lot of that, one portion of that has to do with new borrower repayment plans and borrower protections. They have not put that out to the public yet. It is still in committee working out the details. So I would imagine in the next month or so, we will have some more specific information. But the reason I didn't want to talk about like income driven repayment benefits is because I'm not sure what will exist come July 1st. So once we have a grip on what the new policies are, we will put together some information and update our website and make sure that students are going into the aid year. Unfortunately, it will be after July 1st, but going into the aid year knowing more information. Now, I will say for borrower protection, um, when we talk about borrower protection, we're basically talking about the like borrowers have access to deferment and forbearance options, like I had mentioned. So I'll give you an example. And there, when you have a student loan, one of those things that you have to sign off on, it's, and I will tell you, it's like any loan that you get as a young adult, you will, is you'll have to, like, there's always a statement of borrower responsibilities and borrower rights. So your borrower rights are that you have access to the information about repayment plans. You have access to possible deferment or forbearance. And when I talk about that, for example, when I was maybe 23 or 24 after college, lost a job, or maybe I don't quite remember, but definitely lost a job, had a loss of income. I came to a month where I could not pay my student loan payment. There is an option at that point to reach out to your servicer and say, I would like to utilize my deferment option and not make a payment this month. And there's certain, based on what the amount of loans you have, there are certain deferment and forbearance options. But I would encourage you, if you're interested in something like this, we will have more information out as the time gets closer. But I would also encourage you, if you are interested in this type of information, you may want to consider applying for jobs at the financial aid office when you get to college.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, I'm sorry. We just received another question of who do we talk to about verifying credits that transfer in from dual enrollment courses? Our daughter will have her associates coming into UMW.
Okay, I'm going to give that one to Jerry if you're still on.
I'm still here. Let me pop back in. Okay.
Okay,
So
sure.
so students will need to send the transcript from wherever they are earning those particular credits in to our office, and that particular review actually occurs through the registrar's office. But students do have to send that transcript from the community college or for your institution that they are actually earning those credits from. We unfortunately cannot just use the high school transcript and let it say dual enrollment in order to, that was of course good enough to go through the admissions process, but since the registrar's office and the university is actually going to be giving you credit for those courses, they do need to see that particular transcript from that particular credit granting institution, and then they will make that particular review. And students will also see those updates in their particular admissions portal. So you will be able to see that the registrar office that the office has gotten that transcript. You'll be able to see that particular review is occurring as well. But that occurs as we get throughout the summer as well, as we get
Yeah.
into the summer and we get closer to the academic services team selecting your courses and those things.
So, Jerry, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I believe the process is fairly simple. They would just go to their community college website and they
Yes.
should have an online form to request the
Yes, they
transcript
should have an
after
online
they're
form.
graduated from all of their classes.
Yes. So if they have not, so if they're still wrapping up those courses, they can send those, they can wait and send those at that particular time. Yes, Angela, you could get that current transcript sent and then get one sent at the final transcript. That is perfectly fine. Yes, that is a possibility for that to happen, but you just make sure you will request that. A lot of times it is through an online form. But the community college or the four-year institution that's giving you that credit they will have all the keys to say, hey, here's where you go to get that sent to us. Hmm.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I will put in another plug for make sure you have filed your FAFSA. We do have our scholarships applications still open until May 15th. And mainly if you need any assistance or have any questions, just contact the financial aid office.
Hi, I have another question.
Sure.
Um, for some schools, whenever we receive scholarships, like external scholarships, um, the school like kind of takes away the additional like financial aid amount based on like how much you receive for external scholarships. How does UMW do that process? Do they still accept external scholarships while providing the same amount of aid they provided before? Being
Yes,
notified.
we do that. We call that stacking. So we our strategy is more of a stacking strategy where you may get your admission scholarship and then you have a scholarship from high school or a community association. We do not reduce your admissions or merit scholarships based on getting those outside resources. They will just stack on top of each other. Now,
Okay.
there is always at every school a maximum amount of financial aid a person can have, but that is called a cost of attendance. So it's the if you look at a school's website and look at their cost estimate, it's usually called estimated cost of attendance. It includes tuition fees, room board, and then things that you should budget for, like transportation, books and supplies, personal expenses. All of that together is usually the maximum amount of financial aid a student can receive. So that doesn't happen like very often, but in general, if you're receiving outside scholarships, they will not replace any portion of your merit admission scholarships.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question about, can you provide guidance on using the $529? Kim, this might be for you.
Hi, sure. So we have a couple different 529s. If it's a Virginia 529, they have an invest or a prepaid. A prepaid only covers your tuition, our auxiliary fee, and the $30 processing fee. And what you'll need to do is contact the prepaid office and they will put you on a roster. And then we are given that roster and we actually will what we call memo your account. So you'll see that on your account and you'll also see that on your billing statement that we know that the Virginia prepay will be covering your tuition and fees. And that way you don't have to pay for that. And if you don't see it and you're supposed to be, just let our office know. We do get the roster usually on a daily, sometime a weekly basis, but that'll start coming in. And we like to have all those accounts memoed before we send out that first e-bill in July. Now, if it's an invest, Virginia Invest, you would need to contact the office again because you actually have to submit a withdrawal request. And we don't see that. It's always great to let our office know that you're receiving that, and they'll send the funds directly to the university. And that covers tuition, it covers room and board. And it also, like if you're a new student, it'll cover a new student fee, any parking decals. Now, if it's a non-Virginia 529, you would need to contact the 529 administrator, and check payments are sent directly to our cashier's office. And again, unfortunately, we don't get a roster, so it's always good to contact our office to let us know that you are getting a 529. If you have any documentation, please forward that to our office so we can make a note on your student's account.
Thank you, Kim.
Sure, and you can find this information on the student accounts website too. I'll put that link in the chat.
That would be great. Thank you. There's also a great video. I believe it's still out there, right, Kim, about payment plans?
I think it is. We're kind of in the process of updating our
Okay.
videos. We do have a short video on our billing, so it's always great to see
Okay.
and kind of have a good understanding of your billing statement and your student accounts.
Great. Some good resources. Yeah. All right. Do we have any other questions? Molly, anything else?
No, I think that's it. All the
Don't
questions have been answered.
think
Okay.
so. All
Okay.
righty.
I would just like to say, come see us at orientation.
Yes, absolutely. Come see Tessa and her team at orientation, as well as I know the cost conversation scheduling link was also placed in the chat as well. So those will continue as we get through. I know we got May 1st coming up for those of you who have not made a decision yet, but those of you who have, we still will have some of those as we get into May as well. So feel free. If anything comes up, any questions, have any concerns that start to come up, please feel free to reach out to us and with either of our teams, whether that be the admissions office or that be the financial aid team as well, and get those squared away. And did someone unmute? Okay.
Nope.
All right.
Sorry, I have a question. You mentioned orientation. When is that, and is that only one day, or are there multiple dates?
So orientation occurs multiple dates during the month of June. So there are 5 different sessions, and it is a day and a half long program during June, but there are five
Yeah.
different sessions for that.
You stay overnight one night.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And thank you, Tammy. Thank you for your thanks. All right, folks. Well, we thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for the insight. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good one.
Thank you.